Yo, YouTube, what's happening, guys? Welcome back to another video. Today, I want to talk about the hardest fighter person challenge for each champion. So as we know, in the UFC, we got a list of champions starting from flyweight, all the way to heavyweight. And for each champion, you have a list of contenders who can fight him, right? That's usually how it goes. So in this video, I want to talk about the hardest challenge for each champion. Also, if you hear a lot of like explosions and things going off in the background, it's the 4th of July, so yeah, it's just a lot of fireworks. Anyways, let's start off. Also, I should probably mention that if there are two fighters who are equally as challenging for the champion, I'll mention them both. And one more thing, for the UFC right now, there's kind of an issue where lots of the champions are so dominant in the division that it's kind of hard to enlist one fighter who's really going to be, competitive. I'll give you an example. Like, we look at the heavyweight division with Tom Aspinall. Tom's skills is so high that, most of the other fighters in heavyweight are not really going to be able to compete with Tom. But I will say this, it's also the heavyweight division, so anything could go. Anyways, moving on to get in the video, let's start off with the flyweight division with Pantoja, or Alexander Pantoja anyways. So for Alexander Pantoja, I got two fights. One of them's a hot take, or two fighters I should say, but one of them is a hot take. The first one being Joshua Van. Obviously we know he just beat Royval. Why am I forgetting his first name? Is it Alex Royval? Point is, he beat Royval and it was a freaking phenomenal fight. That fight was so good. That fight was really, really good. But he beat Royval, and that elevated him from, I think, number 12 in the ranking all the way to number 1. Insane work. And he will be fighting for the title next. So here's the thing. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I don't think I don't think he can win. It's not that. I just think it would be a very, very hard matchup for Joshua Van. And I think Alexander Pantoja beats him. Nothing against Joshua Van. I keep on calling him Royval. My bad. Nothing against Joshua Van. Phenomenal fighter, also hella entertaining too, really entertaining fighter, but I just haven't seen enough of his groundwork to sit here and say that like his ground game can compete with Alexander Pantoja. Another thing is, he was hurting and he dropped Royval in the 3rd round. We know Alexander Pantoja has a freaking granite chin, and I just don't see him getting dropped the same way I see, Royval getting dropped. So I'm gonna say that Joshua Van is a tough fight against Alexander Pantoja, but I don't think he's like this freaking nightmare matchup for Pantoja, and I think Pantoja can win. I don't want to say easily, but I still think he wins. Moving on to my second fighter, and this is the hot take one, it's kind of a controversial one, but I think for Alexander Pantoja that Brandon Moreno is the second, fighter that would give him a challenge out of everyone else. And you probably wonder, like, what the hell are you talking about, bro? This guy, Brandon Moreno, lost twice to Alexander Pantoja. Yes, he lost twice to Alex Pantoja, that's true. But here's the thing. One of them was on Tough, which was like 10 years ago, and they were both young bucks, young fighters who was, still getting into fighting, and they were both very inexperienced. So I don't really like to count that one too much. But then you have his title match against Brandon Moreno, and yes, Alexander Pantoja did win, but it was a very competitive fight. It was a really close fight, and it was a brawl and a war. Now here's the thing. After his title match with Brandon Moreno, and you could argue the Royval fight was also kind of a war. And maybe I honestly think Steve Erceg won against Alexander Pantoja, but that's besides the point. I think out of every single one of his fights, aside maybe excluding the Erceg fight, no one really gave Alexander Pantoja the challenge like Brandon Moreno gave him a challenge. I know you're probably thinking, Brandon Moreno lost the fight after he lost to Pantoja. That's true, but I honestly think it was just more of a momentum thing than it was Brandon being washed up, because he then is now on a 2-fight winning streak, beating, I'm not forgetting his name. Why am I blanking out? I'll put an image of him up on the screen. I do not remember him, but he beat that guy, and he also beat Steve Erceg. So now he's on a 2-fight win streak, and I just think maybe if he catches himself one more dub, he could possibly fight for the title. I know that most of the MMA fans don't want to see that, because we've seen Alexander Pantoja fight Brandon Moreno, twice now, and we've also seen Brandon Moreno fight the same opponents, for 2-3 times and have like multiple rematches. I get that, but I still want to see Moreno fight for the title. But I'm a Moreno fan, so what can I say? I want to see that maybe champion. Moving on to bantamweight. I have to remember the division now because I'm starting to forget. But for bantamweight, we have the champion is Merab Dvalishvili. And for the one fighter who can give the champion a real challenge out of all the other fighters, that's going to be Corey Sandhagen. Now, here's the thing. I got to be honest with you guys. The only reason I'm putting Corey Sandhagen out of everyone else is because we haven't seen Corey fight Merab yet. And I got to be honest with you guys. I really don't know if anyone in the bantamweight division beats Merab. The only person who's going to beat Merab in the bantamweight division is going to be Merab, And what I mean is that Merab is having a hard time struggling making the weight now. So I could see him trying to, or leaving the bantamweight division to go up to featherweight to have less of a weight cut. But aside from that, I don't see an actual real contender beating him, including Corey Sandhagen, which, you know, it kind of sucks to say that because I'm a big fan of Corey. I just think Merab is such an insane champion that it would be hard to go against him. I mean, the guy dominates his opponents, literally. But with that being said, I mean, I know people are going to be like, well, what about someone like Peter Yan or whoever else? Or like, obviously, Sean O'Malley's out of the question. Or like an Umar rematch. No, I'm not even going to say they're going to give him a challenge because they don't. The only person who gave Merab a challenge during his defense is Umar, but he only beat him in the first 2 rounds, and then he lost the last 3 to Merab. And then Peter Yan got 50-45. So it's like, can we really say they give, you know, Merab a challenge? And the thing is, Corey, I get that Corey, you know, he lost to Umar, and if you do like the MMA mass, I get that. But here's the thing, Corey's the only fighter who hasn't fought Merab in like the top 5. So that's why I'm putting him up here. That's all. It's not like I think Corey's just this dominant fighter who's gonna run through Merab. You know, it could happen. He could knock him out. It's just that like I don't really know who else could, you know, do anything to Merab, to be honest with him. I sound like I'm glazing, but can you blame me? The guys, he submitted Sean O'Malley in the 3rd round. Moving on, we have featherweight champion right now is Alexander Volkanovski, and the #1 fighter who could give him a challenge is Movsar Evloev. Now, here's the thing. Movsar Evloev, I don't think he beat Volkanovski. I think Volkanovski beats him just because I think Volkanovski is overall a better fighter. But after seeing after seeing how Movsar beat Aljamain, after seeing Movsar beat Aljo, I think that Movsar Evloev can give him a pretty tough challenge. I mean, not a lot of people thought the Aljamain starting fight and Movsar Evloev's fight was that entertaining. I thought it was a MMA's classic. I mean, we had 2 phenomenal grapplers going at it for 3 rounds. It was a really good fight. I thought it was, you know, really good. It could have, you know, some people thought Aljamain's won, and it could have gone either way. But with that being said, I don't think he really competes with Volkanovski. I mean, he doesn't really have pop in his shots like that. And in terms of grappling, yes, Movsar Evloev is a great grappler, but Volkanovski is also known for having great grappling, being able to defend Islam's takedowns and getting up and arguably winning the fight to some people. So with that being said, I honestly think Volkanovski wins. I just don't see how Movsar can pose any form of challenge. I don't want to say because he is a challenging fight, but what I mean is I don't see him being able to outdo Volkanovski in any element of martial arts, right? I think Volkanovski is a great grappler. I think that he wouldn't be submitted by Movsar Evloev. I don't think Volkanovski is going to be able to, you know, get knocked out or anything like that by Movsar, because we saw him go 5 rounds with Diego Lopez, who is a harder striker, who punches harder, I should say, than Evloev. I just think that out of the 2, Alexander Volkanovski wins, but I still think it would be a competitive fight. Moving on to lightweight. So now for lightweight, as we know, Ilya just became a new champion, and with how he dominated Charles Oliveira, I really don't know if anyone could beat this guy. But there is one fighter who would give Ilya a tough fight, and I'm not talking about Islam, because although Islam and Ilya would be a phenomenal fight, that fight is most likely not going to happen, and I don't think Islam is ever going to go back to 155 just because of the weight cut. Wait, no, I take that back, because he was having a hard time putting on weight. That's besides the point. The hardest fight for Ilya Topuria right now is Arman Tsarukyan. And the reason I say that is because Arman Tsarukyan is the closest fighter who is, you know, the closest well-rounded fighter in the division right now, and the only fighter who can really compete with Ilya on the ground as much as on the feet. And what I mean by that is, yes, one could argue maybe someone like Justin Gaethje is a better striker than Arman, but Justin Gaethje absolutely sucks on the ground, and if he gets taken out by Ilya, he'll get submitted. And not only that, Justin Gaethje would 100% get knocked out by Ilya Topuria, who knocked out Charles, and who's been knocking out people like Max Holloway, who are known for having granite chins. And I know I'm not trying to do MMA math here, but Max Holloway did knock out Justin Gaethje, who's known for not having like power in his pops like that. He's more of a volume puncher. So if Max Holloway is able to knock him out, God knows what Ilya would do to him. But I do think Arman would do pretty well against Ilya. I mean, I think overall, I think Arman would lose, but out of everyone in the lightweight division, mainly being Paddy Pimblett, Justin Gaethje, and Arman, because those are the top 3 contenders that everyone's talking about right now. Out of everyone, or maybe like Dan Hooker. Yeah, but I still don't think someone like Dan Hooker, or even Matthias Gamrot for that matter, could beat someone like Ilya. But if I had to choose, it would be Arman Tsarukyan, and I do think that Arman would lose to Ilya. He wouldn't be able to compete on the feet. That's just a fact. And on the ground, he would pose a a tough challenge for Ilya on the ground, but I just don't see Ilya being submitted by Arman Tsarukyan if he's able to. I mean, we saw how he dominated Oliveira on the ground. We saw how he put him in the crucifix. So I really believe that his grappling can hold up. Moving on to the welterweight, the 170 division. Now, here's the thing. For welterweight, we have JDM, and the obvious number one contender is Islam. But Islam is not really at 170 yet. He's more of a 155 pounder, and he's kind of in this awkward position where he's not really a 170 fighter, nor is he really a 155. He's kind of in the middle, so I'm gonna exclude him for this video just to spice things up a little bit. And for JDM, I think that is Shavkat Rakhmonov. Now hear me out. I know that after watching the Aaron Gary the Rakhmonov fight, I can't pronounce his first name for some reason, people are going to start saying, well, if Shavkat Rakhmonov almost got submitted by Aaron Gary, like, you really think he stands against JDM, who dominated Bilal? No, he didn't dominate Bilal. I take that back. It was a war, but who beat Bilal? We know that JDM is a predominant striker, and he will not submit. He's not going to go for a submission against someone. He's going to try to knock him out, TKO them, or win by decision. That's just his style. And here's the thing, Shavkat Rakhmonov is also a predominant striker. Well, I mean, yeah, I would say he's a predominant striker, although he does have some submissions under his name. If you look at the rest of the 170 division, someone like Ian Gary or Sean Brady or Kamaru Usman, which I don't really see how Kamaru Usman can ever be someone like JDM. But, we'll take Kamaru Usman out of the picture for a second. You look at someone like Ian Gary, Sean Brady. Ian Gary, yes, he's a great striker, and he's also pretty decent on the ground. I don't really see him being able to take down JDM at all, after JDM was able to defend every single one of, or at least escape every single one of Bilal's takedowns, and was never really threatened by being submitted or anything like that, which is, I get, it's kind of cliche since Bilal isn't known for having finishes like that. But we know that JDM has great wrestling offense, and I just don't see how Ian Gary, who's not really the best grappler, is going to be able to take him down like that, and compared to how Bilal did. Also, when it comes to Sean Brady, yes, Sean Brady is a phenomenal grappler, and yes, I can see Sean Brady, being able to do some work on the ground. But Sean Brady, I just don't see anyone in the welterweight division being able to take down and submit JDM after the Bilal Muhammad fight, and I just think he's evolved so much on the ground that you'd have to literally be a Hamza Chimaev to stand a chance against JDM on the ground in terms of being able to actually take him down and submit him. The only way you can really beat JDM is by just dominating him on the feet. I don't see a world, and there's not really much grapplers in the 170 division that are good enough to be able to take down someone like JDM, keep on the ground, and submit him. Because if Bilal wasn't able to, I don't see anyone else being able to, especially not Kamaru Usman. For all you Kamaru Usman fans, don't get me wrong, I have nothing against Usman, but I don't think his wrestling compares to Bilal Muhammad's wrestling, and I don't think he will be able to take down and keep JDM on the floor. With that being said, I am going to have Shavkat Rakhmonov, who does have finishing ability, and who I can see being able to, in the later rounds, maybe put away JDM. That's debatable. He was barely able to put away with Ian Gary, but out of everyone, I think he has a good chance. I just think that JDM is such a good champion right now. Moving on to middleweight. Now, here's the thing. For the champion, we have obviously Dricus du Plessis, the African champ. And for the number one contender, we have, and it's kind of an obvious one, Hamza Chimaev. So here's the thing, this fight has already been booked, and we will see the outcome for this fight pretty soon, which I'm so hyped about. This fight is going to be so sick. But here's the thing with Hamza is he's such a mystery in how he's going to do in this fight. And what I mean is this. We all know that the round one version of Hamza Chimaev is probably the most dangerous fighter on earth. We know that in round one, there's not really a lot of men in the world who can survive a round one with Hamza Chimaev, let alone being able to win a round one with Hamza Chimaev. We don't even know if there has been a fight in the UFC who won the first round against Hamza Chimaev. That's really, really impressive. That's not just impressive, that's insane. And that's actually insane. And Dricus du Plessis said it himself. He said hey man, I know I'm going to get taken down by Hamza, and there might be a chance where I lose the first round, but what about the other 4 rounds that come after? And that's the thing. That's the question mark with Hamza Chimaev. What about the 4 other rounds? Now, here's the thing. People are going to say this. Hamza Chimaev, his cardio is bad, and his cardio is not going to be able to last him for the rest of the rounds. I disagree. I think what happened with Hamza Chimaev in the Kamaru Usman fight was more of a situational thing, because I think it was the ring rust, the sickness, and all the other factors contributed to that. Just because I'm an optimist, and I would like to think that as a UFC fighter, you'd have to have good cardio because you're a freaking UFC fighter. Like, this is what you do profession. At the very least, you can go on a run or two to better it, right? Maybe I'm weird for thinking that way, but the point I'm trying to make here is I really do believe that Hamza has enough cardio to last him a couple rounds. And we saw that in the Gilbert Burns fight. Yes, it was more of a war. It wasn't just one-way traffic from Hamza, but he did go the distance. He did go the 3 rounds, and it was a war. The point I'm trying to make here is he did last all 3 rounds. He didn't just give up after the first. And same thing with the Kamaru Usman fight. Although he gassed out, he did last all 3 rounds. So I do think he'll be able to go the distance with Dricus du Plessis. And I will bring up the Robert Whittaker fight. Yes, Robert Whittaker's gave in, and yes, that caused him to be able to tap a bit early. But who caused Robert Whittaker's jaw to go out in the first place? Because if you look at his fights before that, none of his opponents who hit him in the face were able to break Robert Whittaker's jaw the same way Hamza did. That power came from somewhere, and I'm pretty sure he'd be able to use that power against Dricus. But with that being said, and to get on to our next weight class, I want to say this. I think this fight is going to be 50-50, and I think Hamza Chimaev is Dricus Duplessis' toughest matchup. Moving on, we have the light heavyweight division with Magomed Ankalaev, and the toughest, and this is kind of a tough one, but the toughest matchup for Magomed Ankalaev is, I mean, I'm just gonna have to say Alex Pereira. And I gotta be honest with you guys, light heavyweight is one of those divisions where if Magomed beats Alex again, because he beat him pretty handedly the first time, if Magomed beats him again, I don't see anyone else being able to stand with Magomed like that. I mean, he is just a really good, well-rounded striker, and that threat of the takedown just enhances his striking. Now, here's the thing. There is always a chance that Alex Pereira could beat Magomed, because Alex Pereira got that knockout power, but that's the only reason I feel like Alex Pereira could win against Magomed. And nothing against Alex Pereira. Alex Pereira is a freaking insane fighter. He is, you know, one of the best to ever do it for a reason. But we all know that his grappling isn't the best. You know what? Let's take grappling out of the picture for a second, because in the first fight they did, you know, I will give Magomed this. They didn't really grapple that much. You know, it was mainly a striking match. But because of the threat of the takedown, Alex Pereira wasn't able to get in his flow state, and it was because of that he lost to Magomed. Well, if Alex Pereira fights Magomed, because there's this whole thing going on where Alex Pereira doesn't want to fight for the title, or maybe is he going to fight for the title? I don't know. But if he fights him again, and I'll make this quick and short, I do think there's two outcomes. He either loses because the threat of the takedown is too much for Alex and he is able to get in his flow state and really tee off from Magomed, or he knocks out Magomed. I feel like Alex's only chance to beat Magomed Ankalaev is to knock him out, while for Magomed, he has a lot. He can take him to the division, he could, you know, I don't want to say knock him out, but he could submit him, you know. So I think for Magomed Ankalaev, his toughest challenge is Alex Pereira. Moving on to the final weight class, heavyweight, and this one, I'm just gonna say nobody. I know that's not the answer you guys want to hear, but there really isn't anyone in the heavyweight division who can give Tom that fight. Yes, there's some fighters who are better than others. Like, I would put Volkov over someone like Cyril Gane, even though they just fought. We know that, as fans, we know that Volkov won, even though the judges gave it to Cyril Gane, which was some BS. But in terms of skill, I just don't really see anyone being able to compete on Tom. His striking is out of this world. His freaking knockout power is something else. His grappling is really good for a heavyweight. You know, he submitted Volkov. He had all of his fights are under a minute, and he's a marauder, as Joe Rogan would say. People forget, man. No, but yeah, I can't really say much. And like I said, I know it's kind of an underwhelming answer, but can you blame me? I mean, like, you look at all the other divisions, you can argue like like you look at middleweight. Hamza is a tough fighter because he imposes the most challenge onto someone like Dricus. It's like when Hamza fights Dricus is going to be thinking about that takedown. He's going to be thinking about that. There's going to be a struggle between the two fighters. But in terms of the heavyweight division of Tom Aspinall, you put Tom Aspinall against Cyril Gane. I see Cyril Gane being able to knock out, or excuse me, I see I almost slipped up there, you guys. I see Tom Aspinall being able to knock out Cyril Gane in the first round relatively easy. I mean, Cyril Gane got put down by Taitui Vasa and was scrambling, fighting for his life, trying to get back on the seat. With that being said, that is the list of fighters who I think impose his hardest challenge to their champion. And like I said, heavyweight division is kind of underwhelming. I know I didn't really give an answer for that. I didn't know what to say. Tom Aspinall is just that good. I sound like a glazer of Tom Aspinall, but can you blame me? This guy is actually really good for a heavyweight. This guy's phenomenal. Moves like a middleweight. You guys know how it goes. I appreciate you guys sticking around to the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.